So hi everyone, I'm Ben. Welcome to the first Node workshop. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ben Porter. I'm the founder of Node. I've been a freelancer myself for the past nearly 10 years. I had a couple of years where I went and ran a company for a bit. Kind of enjoyed that, but then felt that the freelance life was more for me, so went back to being freelance. Alongside this, I've run a couple of other communities, so York Creatives, Tech York, York Filmmakers, and one thing that I started to notice around this time last year was that there's quite a lot of people in the area who are kind of saying that the existing business support offers out there were quite useful if you're someone who starts a company, wants to grow it, wants to take on people, and wants to kind of scale and work towards some kind of exit. But if that's not you, then a lot of the kind of business support stuff tends to be like a kind of pre-packaged thing that everyone says, this is what you need, and it might not necessarily be what you need. So that was the idea of Node. It was finding successful people in the city who have done certain things really well, such as Katie, and inviting them along to come and share their story and talk about how they've done it. So what you're going to get, it's not a kind of pre-packaged, 100% polished thing. It's not going to be someone in a suit who is government funded. It's going to be a real person you can chat to and hopefully build some kind of relationship with in the community afterwards. So that's the kind of context for today, and I'd like to hand over to Katie to lead this workshop.
Thank you, Ben. Set expectations, not polished, absolutely not. Definitely going to fall over, etc., etc. For those who didn't know, I did run a marathon on Sundays, so if I do fall over, I apologise. Okay, right, well, let's talk about the boring stuff first. So why am I here? Why am I qualified to teach you this? Well, I've been doing freelance technically for about 10 years, but officially as Katie Lingo, that silly brand name, since about 2016. Done a lot of training in the background, the National Council for the Training of Journalists and the Chartered Institute of Marketing, and started out just working for really small companies. Please come in, have a seat. And just as we've become a bit more established, we worked with some really big brands, including Amazon, HSBC, and Reuters. You might notice me saying I and we interchangeably. That is because in 2020, I stole my husband from his job. So in addition to things like content writing, blogging, press releases, we now also do data visualization. So he does all the nerdy spreadsheet stuff. So enough about me. Why do we go freelance? Well, we all have our own motivations to do it, namely because we love what we do. I was inspired by Terry Pratchett, who said, writing is the most fun anyone can have by themselves. And I think it's really important to have the right motivation, not to be motivated by something negative like, I hate my boss, because you're just going to start on sort of a negative point. So if you love what you do and you think you can take on the challenge of running your own business, then go for it. And it doesn't have to be, right, drop everything, right, I'm quitting, I'm doing this I'm walking out, I hate it. It can be kind of transitional. So for example, how I did it is, I went from a digital marketing agency job into a marketing role in travel for 2 days a week, and then a pandemic happened, and I got fired. But it was great because it gave me the kick up the arse I needed to focus on Katie Lingo full time. So if you're quite risk averse, that's fine. You don't have to go straight into it all guns blazing. So what about the pros and cons of freelancing? Okay, well, pros, you are your own boss. So no one is giving you jip day in, day out, telling you can't have a holiday. Cons, you are your own boss, but you're also responsible for making the sales, making sure the work comes in, marketing yourself, doing all the admin, the invoices, the accounts. Pros, okay, you manage your own time, so if you do want to go for a coffee at 11 a.m. or indeed work in a coffee shop, that's fine, you can do that. But it's not a 9 to 5. Some people hate that idea, but actually it's probably more like 9 to 9 or working on a Saturday. It's up to you, so you've got to be prepared to put the work in. As a result, you do have uncapped earning potential. I'm probably earning 6 times what I was earning on a salary. But you don't have any job security, things like you have to sort out your own pension or sick pay, stuff like that. You do make a name for yourself. You'll become known within your local community or within your profession, and you get the chance to learn new skills that perhaps you wouldn't have learned on the job. But you do have to deal with stress. When you're a freelancer, you really, really care because your name is on everything. So, if you can handle the stress, then, well, good luck to you. So can you hack it? So we've done a little bit of an introduction, but maybe we can just go around and talk about our motivations for freelancing, if anyone wants to kick off. Great stuff. Well, if we are starting out, I hate to tell this, but you probably will be a bit naff. No one expects you to be a branding or a copywriting or a design expert overnight. Let me show you. This is my logo. I designed it on Paint. This is like clip art. These are my shitty little business cards printed at the world's worst printers in New York. This is my terrible first website that maybe cost £1 a month to run, with me in a onesie. And here is a panda I drew from the joke Eats, Shoots and Leaves, drawn on paint. It is terrible, but don't worry, it's an iterative process. Here's Katie Lingo 2.0. Okay, I got a friend to do an SEO audit of my site and he said, you should really move on to WordPress. So again, it's a little bit more polished, but it's still just a package. It's not ideal. So then we have Katie Lingo 3.0, where you've made a bit more money and actually you can afford to outsource it and get a branding agency to do it for you. So hopefully this looks a lot more professional than it did, but don't panic. So how do we get ourselves out there? Well, before we even go out and introduce ourselves to people, we have to build an online presence. And that doesn't just mean having a website. I mean, if you see here, if you Google Katie Lingo, I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, for better or for worse, Trustpilot, Company's House. It's about building up a bit of a footprint so that when people do talk to you, they can look you up afterwards and you have a bit of a presence online. But don't think that you have to do everything at once. Again, it can be iterative. You can start perhaps with a website, then with social media or vice versa. But here are the kind of 4 things that I would recommend if you are building an online footprint. So obviously, number 1, websites. These are a great way of hosting your portfolio. Quite easy to get started just with something like WordPress or Wix or Squarespace, a sort of drag and drop solution. If you need to learn a little bit more, say, about SEO, there are some great tools on Moz and e-consultancy, so like beginner's guide for SEOs, just to get yourself starting to rank on the search engines, but don't panic because it will not happen overnight. And it's also a great portal for people to get in touch with you. Second up, again, just casting your net wide there, portfolio sites. So if you haven't built a website just yet, you could paste your content, let's say, onto Medium or Contently if you're a writer, or something like Tumblr on Pinterest, let's say if you're a photographer or an illustrator, for example. Pro copywriters, and I will say some of this through the lens of a content marketer, obviously, so there will be sort of industry bodies, as an example, directories. So pro copywriters is a directory that you can upload your profile onto and say the sort of skills and things you write about. But these are really good for SEO as well, because if you type in Katie Lingo, my pro copywriters profile comes up, and it also gives you a backlink to your website from like an established organization. Some examples, obviously Node, Freelance Heroes is another great one, and again, pro copywriters, just to get your name out there. And then finally, social media. Don't feel you have to do everything at once. If you don't want to be on Instagram, you don't have to be on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. Don't spread yourself too thin. But these can be really helpful, A, for SEO, as we saw before. You will show up on Google with your social media profiles, but also just for kind of establishing yourself as a company and as an individual, like on LinkedIn. So, we've got to go out there, we've got to promote ourselves, and no one is going to shout about us except us. So, how do you go about doing it? Well, first of all, we could write a press release. Just look at local organisations, say like editors like York Mix, York Press. Just nice and simple, just say, here I am, this is what I do, I'm available for work. Second up, a Google My Business profile, really easy to set up and really helpful, because as soon as you set it up, you'll have your presence right there on Google straight away. You can see where my office is, you've got photos, you can post updates, really easy to get your presence right there on Google. Third, what about podcasts? Do you love chatting to people? Maybe approach some of your favourite podcasts, speak to the host, or maybe some local ones. Here's one I did with the Impactus Group. I've also worked with Ben on York Creative, so just another way of promoting yourselves via a third party. And then finally, look at your competitors. Now, this doesn't mean stealing all their ideas, but actually, plot twist, your competitors are not your enemy. Your competitors are actually your collaborators, and they're a really great way of getting yourself established on the freelance scene and actually making connections and getting advice from them. So it might be a case of you join a Twitter chat, or you get involved in like a Discord channel, you just ask people questions because they all would have gone through it just like you're going to. Some good online communities I like are Being Freelance or Freelance Heroes again, Node, as I'm sure it will develop. And they might even give you referrals. So it might be a case of, okay, I'm all booked up, or I need a specialist to write about healthcare, for example. Can anyone help? Okay, yes, I'll give the work to you. So these people are not competing with you. They're actually here to help. Some of them will even promote you. So it's been a little bit cut off here, but this is something called Copywriters on the Rack. It's by a guy called Jonathan Wilcox. He interviews you and then he publishes it. So again, gives you a backlink to your site. SEO, fantastic. People are there to lift you up, not compete with you. So, we've established ourselves, we've got a little bit of an online presence. How do we actually win that first client? It's a little bit of a chicken and egg situation, isn't it? I'm sure, when you guys were first coming out onto the job scene, it's like, no one will employ me because I've got no experience, but I've got no experience because no one will employ me. It's really annoying, right? Well, it's the same with freelancing. Because clients need the proof that you can write in a certain way or draw in a certain way or whatever. You know, I can write about this vertical, or I can write white papers or social media posts or whatever. But also, you need to have that portfolio so that you feel strong enough to showcase that work to your clients. So you can say, yes, I definitely have written about pharmaceuticals or whatever. Here's what I have. So how do we go about actually building a portfolio and indeed that social proof so that people will trust us and take us on as their, so let us take them on as a client? Well, we can look back at our previous job roles. So, for example, I worked in a digital marketing agency and wrote a lot about cars. Wouldn't say they're my favorite thing, drove a lot of cars, but I do tell people now I can write about automotive. I'm not Jeremy Clarkson, but you know, it's some proof, and I have it in printed magazines. Any volunteering work, let's say you've painted a mural and you're really proud of it and you've taken a picture. Why not use that, put that in your portfolio on Tumblr or Pinterest or wherever you're hosting it? What about your own personal blogs, your own creative projects? Are you building some furniture in your garden, or are you writing your own blog, like a travel blog, for example? Can you use that in your portfolio? And then what about work experience and training? So, for example, I worked at the York Press, did some journalism experience there. I also trained with the Chartered Institute of Marketing, so I could use, say, like my essays as proof of certain topics I've covered. And how do you turn this into social proof? Well, you might get a reference from your old employer, or if you've got a really good relationship with them, you might even find that they actually outsource work to you when you've finalised your working relationship with them. Volunteering, you could ask for a testimonial or a reference from the head of the organisation for whom you're volunteering. Any personal blogs, you might have friends who might just want to shout about it. They might be quite influential on social media. They could spread your message that way. Or training. I, for example, with my NCTJ portfolio, I lifted the comments from the examiners straight away because they're really lovely and positive, and I popped them on my website as a testimonial just to get my name out there initially. But what about generating leads? How many people have heard of the marketing funnel? Yeah? So you could call it like attention, interest, desire, action, or awareness and evaluation and loyalty and blah, blah, blah. But basically it's about kind of getting your name out there and then getting people to trust you and then finally buying from you and then hopefully coming back again. But how do you get those leads in the first place? Well, I've drawn this crummy triangle on paint because I'm not a designer. And I like to think this is the amount of effort required. So least effort, most effort. Outbound, I'm kind of like, all right, so this is just shouting into the void and hoping that someone will pick up our services. So we might be paid advertising, we might go to a networking event, or we might even send cold emails. Horrible. Inbound, probably my favorite. So that is actually going to people who are requesting something and saying, yes, I can help you with that. So whether they're posting on LinkedIn or things like people per hour or Upwork, which is a little bit risky, but potentially good if you're starting out. Or ideal, and this is the freelancer's dream, referrals, because then they've done the hard work for you. Someone has worked with you before and then they're recommending you, so you don't even need to introduce yourself. But let's look at them in a little bit more detail. So inbound, again, I would say this is probably the easiest kind of sweet spot because you are responding to people's inquiries straight away. So it might just be a case of each day I search freelance copywriter on LinkedIn and see what kind of posts are out there, or I might refine that and see what kind of content are people looking for each day. Two-sided marketplaces, so these are things like Upwork or people per hour. Again, they're a little bit risky because you do have to pay fees and things to take on the work, but could be good for building that portfolio initially. And then even job board newsletters, so there's something called Freelance Writing Jobs by Sean Meaders, for example. Every week you can subscribe to that, and then you can just respond to the newsletters straight away. But a few words of cautions. If you're going to respond on LinkedIn, for God's sake, do it on the DMs, don't do it on the comment, because then all your competitors are going to see it. And yes, they're your collaborators, but also we've got to eat, so, Two-sided marketplaces, so yes, people who are out Upwork don't have a great reputation and for good reason, because they don't pay a lot of money. But perhaps if you are sort of transitioning out, again, good to fill that void. If you are responding to emails or Twitter, they will probably be inundated with responses, so you might not get as high a response rate. What about referrals? Obviously, the dream. So yeah, you might have worked with an agency who says, I know another agency, they can recommend you, they know about your skill set, so you don't have to go out looking for these people. Secondly, if you are quite happy to go meet people in person, networking is really good. You can make a bit of an impression and then follow up with them on LinkedIn. They remember your face and then they remember your content on LinkedIn. Or other social proof. So every time you complete a project, ask someone, please could you give me a review or a testimonial, just so other people can see that I'm the real deal. But again, a few words of caution. If someone is referring you, they might have really good intentions, but say, oh, Katie, will you do these Facebook ads for me? Well, no, sorry, I don't really do Facebook ads. But you don't want to ruin your relationship with them or with the prospective client. Equally, you've got to be honest about it. Don't just try and take on the work if it's not really right for you, because it's just not going to go well for anyone involved. Then with the outbound, again, I'm a little bit cautious of that. Obviously, we will have to start somewhere. But what I would do if I was just going to people completely blind, I would look for my ideal client. So for someone like me, it would be marketing agencies. So I'd go on a directory like Prolific North to see who's out there. I'd also make sure I've got a portfolio and some samples ready for the particular kind of people I'm targeting. And then maybe if I was going to experiment with paid ads, I would use that for kind of like a quick win solution while I'm building my website, while I'm gaining organic traffic in the background. But if you are going to be doing paid advertising, you really need to know what you're doing, because it needs to be hyper-targeted and you can waste money really easily if you don't. So don't be afraid to ask for help and always monitor it. If you are going to be cold emailing people, they're slightly annoying, so try not to just do copy and paste, actually make it a little bit personal, like, hey, saw your post about this or whatever. Just make it a bit more fun, otherwise they wouldn't want to know. Now, speaking of people, there are always going to be people out there, sadly, who want to take advantage of inexperienced freelancers. I know some people in the room haven't we, dealt with people who want to take advantage of freelancers. Here are a few red flags if you are dealing with people who might perhaps not value you. I like to think of it as they don't value your money or your time. So if they start the conversation straight away, like, right, how much would it cost for this? Okay, yep, boom, how quick can you do it? Yep, well, okay, can you do it for lower? Red flag. Equally, if they're a bit funny about any contracts or deposits, it probably means they can't actually afford to pay them and they won't actually have any intention of paying you. If they want a discount for absolutely no reason, well, why should you? If you're going to give a discount, there always needs to be a reason. If they want a free trial, okay, well, does that mean they can't be bothered to look at your portfolio and actually check you out for themselves? Are they saying, oh, yeah, okay, it's low paid, but we'll give you lots of it? And that is like saying, here's a shit sandwich, but we'll give you lots of shit sandwiches if you carry on. Don't want to do that. You could also go on Company's House. This is just something I do now. It sounds a bit stalkerish, but it's just a good way of checking if people are the real deal. If it's a load of zeros, or lots of people have been struck off and stuff, okay, maybe avoid. Likewise, if they expect you to do everything yesterday, it's not your fault if they can't manage their time, and that is not on you. If they're saying, we've been let down by so many other freelancers before, okay, they might have been, but other freelancers might tell you, no, avoid them. So actually, who's really the issue, them or the freelancer? Likewise, if you are part of these communities, these people might say, stay away from that agency or stay away from that client, or even customer reviews on Google. Just things to look out for, just so you can avoid making the mistakes that I made in the beginning. But wait, people always say you should not work for free. And generally, that is absolutely true. I would never advocate working for free, because guess what? That doesn't pay the mortgage, right? But appreciate we all have to build a portfolio and we all have to start somewhere. So is there any other value we can get from it in some other way? For example, let's say it's a blog post for a charity, for example. Am I going to plug a gap in my portfolio? Would I really like to gain some experience in writing about healthcare? Is this opportunity going to make me meet people who are quite influential and could introduce me to others? Is there any learning opportunity? Could I learn new skills while doing this project? Or indeed, can it even lead to paid opportunities? For example, I did a free workshop for a women's group in Leeds about public speaking and shared it on LinkedIn, and then someone said, great, can we pay you to come in and re-deliver that workshop for us? So we've already done the work there. Boom, it was free, but it led to free work. So generally, do not work for free, but if there is something in it for you and it helps your portfolio, it could be worth it. The ultimate question is it worth your time, and is it worth your mental health? Are you going to stress over it? If you are, not worth it. Next up, protect yourself. I really hope everyone knows who that is. I'm not trying to scare anyone, but there are always people out there trying to screw you over. So make sure you have payment terms on your website. You might not know exactly how to write this out, but there are lovely projects on companies' websites like Freelance UK that give you nice templates for starting new contracts. Things like stating your payment terms. This is 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. What are they paying for? Do you get one free round of amends? Can you charge late payment fees? You are well within your rights to under the Late Payment of Commercial Debts Interest Act of 1998 if they don't pay after 30 days unless it's been pre-agreed for 90 or whatever. Always ask for a deposit as well. Again, sounds quite scary and a bit stern, but you will soon separate the wheat from the chaff if people have a real issue with paying a deposit. And generally speaking, I would say 50% for a bigger project, so at least you know you're getting paid a little upfront. And if it is a small project, then definitely get 100%. If they have an issue with it, red flag, run away. If they do try to screw you over, and believe me, this has happened to me, try not to get too emotional. I've been there, I've cried, I've screamed, I've sworn, I've written out really nasty emails and sent them, and I shouldn't have sent them. What you should do is write all the emails, use all the 4-letter words you want, and then don't send it. Just get your rage out, because you will be angry and you will feel very emotionally tied to it because you feel cheated. You've done the work. This is what you've trained for, and they're not treating you well. So let the emotion pass, then start with the formalities. So it could be a polite email. Maybe look up the finance team, say, okay, this is the finance director at X company, find their email on LinkedIn, maybe CC them, look over any contracts that they've given you. Did they actually state 90 days when you thought it was 30, for example? Don't sign anything without reading it. And then if they're ignoring you, maybe send a follow-up email, maybe CC the managing director. That always shits people up a little bit if you see someone a little bit higher. I've done that lots of times. If you really have to, pick up the phone. I've done that before as well. Again, you don't have to be stern, you don't have to be angry, just, hello, may I speak to the finance department, please? More often than not, it's just someone who's been really disorganized or forgotten to send her an email. It's not malicious. If it is malicious, and an absolute last resort, I've never taken legal action, but I have taken a letter before action, which is basically a letter that you send out to a company saying, this is what we're owed, this is what we've delivered. If you do not, we will have to pursue illegal action. There is a lovely company called PCS Credit. They did this for me. It cost me £12. All right, you're not going to get that back. But it did shit people up, and I did get paid. So always know that there is protection one way or another. Generally, what I have discovered is that small businesses, you wouldn't think so, but actually they pay really quickly because it's really easy. They've probably just got a Starlink account on their phone, bing, bang, bosh, pay, easy, no drama. Bigger businesses, particularly corporates, have something ridiculous like, let's say, 90-day payment terms. So make sure you're aware of that and you can handle it with the cash flow if you are taking them on. Some people will have to go through PO numbers and have to go to this finance team and get approved and blah, 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 blah. So make sure you're aware of the process before you send out any invoices. And as a rule, I'm sure some of you will experience this, the lower the project, the more people expect. So the lower the price, people are like, actually, but can you do this, this, and this? Whereas if it's massive, they're like, yep, fine, signed off. I don't know why that is. It's almost as, okay, I don't have a big budget, so I need to make sure I'm getting as much as I can. But just be wary of that when you are pricing and working with people. But what about actually pitching to that client? So let's say we're on a Zoom call or we're meeting them in person. How can we make sure we're nice and confident when we are pitching? Well, first of all, as I always say, lean back on your portfolio and make sure it's nice and fresh. If you've got any work that you're allowed to share and you're proud of, by all means, put it on your website so they can access it easily. Make sure you're speaking to the right person. So it's all very well having a really good chat with someone at a networking event, but if they're not the decision maker, then is it a waste of your time? When you're speaking to them, make sure the pronouns are very much about you, not I am great, I am great. No, how can I help you? Make them feel special. Look up the organisation as well. Make sure you've done your homework, so look up their case studies, look at people they've worked with before, look at their social media, so you can bring that up in conversation and again, make them feel quite special. I like to break the ice with a little bit of a joke, like, look at the weather, or something British, just to kind of make people put their guard down a little bit, just makes things a little bit easier. And if you do know exactly what they're offering, then maybe have some samples ready. So, like, okay, we're writing about healthcare. Okay, I know, boom, boom, boom. I'll get those ready, and then I can send those off as an email afterwards. And if you are really nervous, let's say, about public speaking, going up to meet someone, this is something that I delivered in the public speaking workshop. Has anyone heard of power poses? It's basically in the comfort of Ben knows, in the comfort of like your own space, before you go out and meet anyone, you just go, Basically, when we are nervous, what our amygdala is telling us is that we're being threatened and the predators are going to come and kill us. So we tend to go like this. And we look at the floor. And we're like, That is not going to give off an air of confidence when you're meeting someone new. So what we do is, before we go and talk to someone or have that Zoom call, we go into a room and we go, Rrr! And this lowers the cortisol, the stress hormones in our body, and it makes us feel bigger than we actually are. We're charged up like a bear, ready to attack, and we're not going to let the predators kill us. So try it. You might look ridiculous, but no one's going to see. It's fine. So we've made a name for ourselves. We've established that online presence. We've made some connections. We are doing a little bit better now. We've maybe got a better iteration of our website and our social presence. Now it's time to level up. So where are we going to go from here? I want to introduce you to a tool that changed my life, and I'm going to be harping on about Harpoon for quite a while. Harpoon is basically a CRM software. It's a great way of handling your clients, your money, your invoices, your time. It's all there in one dashboard, and I love it. And probably have a referral code if you want it. It's about £180 for the year, but it will definitely save you that money and time. So it's great for integrating with things like QuickBooks for accounting. You can automate invoices and it will send late payment reminders. So rather than the awkward email like, hi, sorry, I haven't paid for this, it will do it for you. And because it's coming from a machine, people won't get upset, right? It will tell you which clients are always late paying. So you might think, okay, they're always a little bit overdue, maybe I need to be a bit sterner with them. You can also compare your performance year on year or quarter on quarter and look at patterns, like seasonality, think, okay, right, what do I need to do? Do I need to ramp up my marketing in these months? And you can set yourself targets. So, okay, we made X amount this year, let's make X amount this year, and it'll tell you exactly how far you're going. Then in terms of client management as well, getting clients on board is easy. You just pop the details in and that's it. They're right there, right in front of you. And you can allocate time and budgets for each project. So it might be, okay, well, I've got X number of days this month, and it'll tell you, okay, you've gone too far, and which means this client is less valuable to you. But you can also look at things like lead generation sources. So when you onboard a new client, it will say, right, where did this come from? And you can say SEO or LinkedIn or networking, whatever. And then again, you've got that data in front of you. You can see, okay, right, we're doing really well on networking, not so well on SEO. Maybe we should invest more in that. So it's just got all this information in front of you on a dashboard. It's really cheap. It's automated. It's amazing. I love it. What else does it help us do? It helps us to tier clients. Now, obviously, we love all our clients, and they're all the same, except they're not. Now, we can categorize them into really like bottom line stuff. So, okay, how much money we're making from them, how long are the projects taking, and how often does this work actually come in? We can even, if you want to, come up with sort of a rough per hour price. That's not necessarily how we might be pricing our services, but we might say, okay, well, based on how much they're paying, how much time it's taking me to do this work, that's roughly what we're making. So are we breaking even? Are we making money? Or are we losing money? And that might make us rethink how we're working with this client. Okay, do we need to get more from them, or are we putting too much time into one over the other? But then other things might affect our decisions as well. So it might be a case of, okay, they're not paying as much, but let's say they're a charity, or it's mates rates, or there's some sort of sentimental decision. So we have a little quadrant here, sort of volume versus revenue, so how much work they're giving you versus how much money you're actually making, without all the sentimental stuff aside. So for example, if it's a high revenue client but doesn't come in very often, I'll give you an example. Reuters don't come in that often, but when they do, it's a massive white paper project, so it's nice and lucrative. What do I want to do with them? I want to make sure that I'm front of mind and maybe get them in a little bit more often. Likewise, someone might come in quite often but might not be make as much money, so it might be, okay, we'll give that to a junior, or we'll sort of reshuffle our time. There is a more complicated version of this, and there's a little link here. I've done a whole presentation on it in terms of like actually calculating a price per hour and whether or not we're breaking even per client, but this is just a sort of simplified version. So basically within this quadrant, we have green clients, which as I said before, sorry, no I didn't. So if these people come in quite often and they also give you lots of money, then fantastic, keep on trucking, just kiss their feet, they can do no wrong. Blue clients, that's what I said before. So they are high revenue but might not come in as often. So again, maybe just give them a little nudge, think, oh, okay, is it that season to write that report? All right, yeah, we'll get in touch. Yellow clients, okay, they don't make a lot of money, but they do come in quite often and quite reliable. Again, it could be a charity client, could be something a bit more sentimental. Okay, maybe we should give this to a junior we're taking on, or maybe we should upsell more services to them. And then red clients don't come in very often, and when they do, it's not a lot of money. So either outsource it or say goodbye, or maybe you just hate them anyway. I mean, who knows? There might be a reason to keep them on. Ultimately, that's why it's about head and heart. But it's just a good way of kind of tiering people and thinking, right, do I need to redistribute my time? Because we like to have a bit of a mix of all of them, although ideally not red ones. But it's not always about the money. It's about your time and your stress as well. So let's talk about time. I'm I'm sure many of you have heard of Trello. It's a really simple time management tool, project management tool. It's basically just a list of Post-its, and you can put all your projects on there. And it also gives you sort of a timeline view of what you're doing, so you can pop in your work there, you can assign roles to it, and it'll tell you when you're going to, when your deadlines are and when you need to sort of hurry up and get the work done. If you've got stuff like retainer work, perhaps you can start out by planning your month being, okay, I know that's going to come in on the 15th, so I can plan this amount of time. And then when people do come to you just on the fly and say, right, I need this doing, okay, right, we'll look at Trello. Do I have the time to do this? I would always advise adding in maybe an extra day per week just for general admin. So if you are pricing stuff up, just consider that so that you can manage people's expectations as well. You also have a time tracking tool. So again, if we're looking at the value per client or per hour, tools like Teamwork, the project management tool, you can literally time how long you're taking on each client, or even Harpoon, again, my favorite. It'll tell you exactly how much time if you use the time tracking tool on each client, and then it'll tell you, okay, you've only budgeted this much, but you've spent this much time, or indeed you've spent less time, so this client's high value result, which is a great way of just planning, forecasting ahead, and then in terms of the actual doing the work itself, in terms of like avoiding procrastination, there's something called Pomodoro, which is just a technique of like focusing. It'll give you like a bell, so for like 25 minutes at a time, get your head down and the bell will ring, then you can relax. So it's a really good way of staying focused rather than going on Twitter or whatever, which we all do. So we've talked about managing time. Now let's actually look at our roles. Obviously we're all self-employed here, we're working for ourselves. But this is something we've adapted from a book called The E-Myth. Now, I'm not normally a fan of kind of business self-help books, but this one seemed really practical. It's by a guy called Michael E. Gerber, and he came up with a theory of entrepreneurs, managers, or technicians, and the roles that we play within our business. In reality, we're actually all three. So we're really learning a lot when we're freelancing. If you're a technician, that is basically, this is the skill you provide, this is the service you provide. So you are the designer, you are the illustrator, this is you doing what the business set out to do. But you don't handle things like the admin or the invoicing, the accounting. If you're the manager, well, you're doing everything that's going on behind the scenes, the less sexy stuff. Again, the admin, making sure everyone gets paid, making sure processes are in place so you can succeed long term. Then, of course, we have the entrepreneur. So they're thinking more about the long-term vision of the business. How are they growing the business? Are they going out networking? Are they doing the sales and marketing? They're going beyond the day-to-day. Now, in reality, if you're self-employed, you've got to do all of these. So how are you going to manage it? Well, this is, again, something we've adapted from the E-Myth. I told you about Craig, my husband, before. So we drew up a little chart of all our roles within the organisation. And it turns out we actually have 21 employees. Except obviously we don't. I'm in yellow, CEO, obviously, whereas Craig is in green. So he does all the lovely, boring stuff. Fine, no, I'm joking. But he's happy to do the figures because he does all the numbers. He does like data viz and all the kind of nerdy stuff. He does numbers, I do words, simple as. But he might also do business development. So it might be that he's a business development manager and I'm the junior business development manager because he might find the leads and then I might sort of qualify them. So we can look at dividing our roles and thinking, okay, right, I'm the chief marketing officer, but I'm also the creative, I'm also head of data. And if we've just got a rough idea of who does what, this helps us streamline our processes. Likewise, you might outsource some roles. So that one in red just says taxes, that's my accountant, or it might be you outsource your design work, stuff like that. So imagine yourselves as one big organization, and then you can kind of plan your work around that. So here's a little workflow. So junior BDM, let's say that's me. I meet someone at an event, then I give it to the senior BDM, and then we put a quote together, and then the creative manager looks at the quote based on this and gives a brief, and then they give it to the content writers, which might be me or it might be Craig, and then we send the work onto the client, the account manager of that, which again might be me, might be Craig. So we've all got our roles, right? Okay, what am I stepping into today? Am I the salesperson? Am I the creative? Am I the entrepreneur? Am I the technician? So you can create your own sort of flow chart just based on the process that you will go through. And it just helps you sort of save time and just get a rough idea of exactly how you do things so that, you know, if people do ask you, okay, well, how do you do things occasionally? And go, this is exactly how we do it. Now, we've been talking about growth and about going limited. And I think, Owen, you and I think we did a blog about this a few years ago, didn't we? About sort of expanding and going into agencies. So Obviously, as a freelancer, you're probably going to start out as a sole trader, self-employed, so you've got to do your self-assessment once a year. You can do it in January if you're like everyone else, or you can be super organised and do it on the 6th of April, probably not. But if you do want to go limited, it's quite simple. You just go to Companies House, pay £12, bing bang bosh, you've got your article, I forget the word, but there's a document saying that you are live. And you'll need an accountant. Now, obviously, you can have an accountant as a self-employed person as well, but you will need one because they'll be doing things like submitting returns to the HMRC for you. Being limited is great in terms of limited liability, because if, heaven forbid, you publish something that the client thought was defamation, they tried to sue you, they would be suing the business, not you directly. There are also tax benefits. For example, you have to pay yourself, so it could be, okay, well, if I pay myself this much, then I don't have to pay national insurance because I can get dividends instead, and income tax versus corporation tax. So there are benefits to it, and if you've got a good accountant, then you'll definitely save a lot of money on taxes. But there are pros and cons, just like there are to freelancing. So you might have a little bit more authority with your clients. People might say, okay, well, I'm a big brand, I want to work with a big brand. Someone is limited, okay, that makes you look more professional, let's say. But you will have to pay an accountant to do it. You can have co-directors and you can split your shares, which again is good for dividends and saving taxes that way. But you can't just take money out willy-nilly. I remember I used my styling account to buy some Dominoes and my husband got really angry. He was like, what are we going to tell the accountant? I was like, I don't know, I was drunk, I'm sorry, it was an accident. There might be, again, tax benefits, things like a company car, or if you go VAT registered, you can claim VAT back. So generally you go VAT registered if you're earning more than £85,000 per year, but you can register before that. But cons, you will have some information publicly on Companies House. So if you are using a home address, for example, that might be on there. So you might want to use your accountant's address or just use a different one entirely. You don't need to fill out your self-assessment, which is great. Get your accountant to do it. Brilliant. That's what you're paying them for, right? Saves you a bit of admin there. But there may be charges or other admin in other areas, like going on to Companies House and saying, okay, I've got a new director now, or I've just got married, I've got to change my name. So again, there's admin and saved admin. So it's kind of quite balanced. It's up to you whether or not you want to do it. Don't have to. It's completely up to you. Right, moving on to the final chapter. So we've got established, we've grown, we've maybe become limited, we've maybe got a team. How do we maintain this for the long term? First one, and I'm really glad you're here because I remember you mentioning the dark art of pricing. So this is something I just want to talk about a little bit. People don't know how much to charge for their work, and people more often than not will charge way less than they're actually worth, and it's going to happen. I know when I first started out, I was going, I've charged this much, but if that's too much, then I can do a little bit less, like that, right? It's going to happen. It's going to happen because you're not as confident because you don't have that portfolio yet. But there are ways you can calculate it. For example, you can look at your years of experience. So have you trained in a particular field? Have you worked for the NHS so you can write about healthcare, for example? How can you add value that way? There are also industry benchmarks. So one that I use is Pro Copywriters. They do a survey each year where they interview all their members and say, what is your day rate? And then they give you an average day rate based on that and sort of based regionally as well. So it might be, say, the day rate is £400. So you say, okay, well, this is our benchmark based on this. Am I better than this or am I worse than this? So you can sort of benchmark it that way. Then there are also other organisations. Some people just say, look, this is what we pay, that's it, no room for negotiation. So things like the NUJ, National Union of Journalists, they have directories sort of showing what people will pay for certain things like a day on the news desk, or this is how much we'll pay for an article, stuff like that. So it just all gives you sort of ballpark figures if you're really not sure how to charge. Then there's thinking about how we charge. So do we charge by the day, by the hour, project, or something else? Well, there are sort of benefits to each. Day rates, I find agencies generally say, what's your day rate? They just like it as a bit of a ballpark figure. And you can think, okay, well, how long is this project going to take me? Okay, it will take me X number of days. It's really easy to come up with a figure. I would always add an extra half a day just for amends or just back and forth between the client because there's a lot of admin. It's not just about the work itself. Some agencies, and maybe more often small businesses, prefer hourly rates. Again, just good as a ballpark figure, but probably good for smaller projects if it's going to take less than a day, for example. But do remember that it's not about time. So it's not a case of, oh, wow, it's going to take me 25 hours to do, so it's going to cost loads of money. No, it's about the value you're giving to the client. So yes, it may take you 8 hours, but is it going to give them a £10,000 a load of leads, then yes. So make sure you're selling the value, not the time. Then there's project rates, probably best for freelancers because there is a lot of leeway in terms of, okay, no one's like watching the clock and saying, let's stick you this many hours. You could be a bit more flexible and it might be a case of, well, this project will cost this much because it needs this much extra research or I need to bring in this resource. Or it might be different skill sets. So I might charge more for a copywriting project than I would for a proofreading project, for example. So you can be a bit more flexible there and no one's watching the clock. And then finally, we have retainers as well. So these are a really good way of guaranteeing ongoing work. So it might be a case of, they might say, perhaps we could do a volume discount if we guarantee X number of blogs per month for the next 6 months. Okay, you can probably take the hit there if you can get it in writing, guaranteed for, say, 6 months. Some people will also look for things like quantity, so paying by the word. Generally quite frowned upon. I think this comes from more like the publishing industry, like Carrie Bradshaw. I get paid $5 per word or whatever. I wish. Generally a bad idea because it focuses on quantity rather than quality. And as I always say, writing short copy is a lot harder than long because you have to write it all down and then edit it. So generally avoid, unless it's something that doesn't need a lot of finesse, let's say like meta descriptions. In reality, you'll probably do a mix of all four. You might have a day rate, for example, as a benchmark, but it really depends. So not just about money, but about time as well. The bigger your business gets, the less time you actually spend doing the work and you most people spend working on the business. So how can we save time? You can use templates, things like, okay, I want to onboard a client quickly and it's taking me ages to write out this contract, boom. Use templates from like Freelance UK or use software like DocuSign. No awkward emails for chasing late payments, just use software to automate it for you. If you have written any blog content and you want to promote yourself a bit more, just repurpose it, find it at a pertinent time. For example, I wrote about the time I went on The Apprentice and then I just post it every year when the new Apprentice series comes out. Also choose tools that integrate with your existing things, so things like QuickBooks and Harpoon, so it just save you a lot of time faffing. Speaking of saving time, work versus life balance. We really need to consider our mental health, very serious subject here. So whenever you're taking on a new project, is it a dream client? Are there any charitable opportunities? Are you going to learn anything from this? What is in it for you? Ask yourself, am I saying no to things that I used to enjoy? So am I not spending as much time with my family? Is it worth it? Ask yourself, if I feel a bit funny about this, those red flags we talked about before, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? And how will this benefit me in the long term? So will it make me loads of money? Will I learn lots? Will I have a fantastic portfolio as a result? But what am I sacrificing as a result? So with that in mind, we should set boundaries with the clients. Just little things can make a big difference. So you might say, put your working hours in your email. I'm seeing a lot more people saying, I'm emailing you at this time, but that doesn't mean I expect you to reply because I've my own working hours. Get a separate work phone number, because some people, massive red flag, if they're like, oh yeah, we'll just talk on WhatsApp, that just means you're always connected. So you can just use a dual SIM. I use one in my phone, just walk into O2, 2 SIMs, 1 phone, simple. If you have clients that quite often say, oh, can you just do this? Oh, I'm really sorry, this has just landed on our lap. Okay, fine, fair to do once or twice, but don't make it a habit because their bad time management is not your problem. And do remember, finally, I'm going to get a bit serious here, clients are human and they realise that life gets in the way. I lost my dad a few years ago and I was really, really scared I would lose my clients as well because I obviously needed time off. And they were absolutely lovely about it. They were like, look, take your time. We'll be waiting for you when you come back. They are human. And if they're not, fuck them. You don't want to work with them. So one issue we have as freelancers is the feast and famine cycle. Suddenly we're really, really busy and then suddenly just hearing crickets, right? So how do we stop this and make sure we keep working? Oh. I've got my Syrian Spanish, so I don't forget Spanish. So talking about that harpoon and looking at those patterns of work, we can look at the patterns of how often work comes in. So for us, for example, May is usually a quiet month, but September is really busy. So we might say, oh, actually, that client does this report every year. Let's give them a nudge. Said nudges don't have to be like, oh, hi, can I do this work for you? They could just be really nice, personalised emails like, oh, I saw this article the other day. It reminded me of you. How are you? It will make people feel special. Then again, get you front of mind. Don't give up marketing just because you're busy, even if it's just repurposing the content that you've done before, because you'll need that to kind of prop you up during the quieter periods. If you have got any retaining work, make sure you plan it in months ahead and maybe suggest to people, oh, okay, it's June. What are you thinking about for Christmas? So you can kind of cover your bases later on down the line. And then finally, when you have finished a project, ask people for a review, just so you've got the social proof so you can bring in more people. Don't be too proud. I think as freelancers and as self-employed people, we'd like to think, no, I'm doing it all by myself. But no, you should ask for help, certainly with your competitors or your collaborators. And all these organizations, obviously Node, your creators, everything that Ben does, and these other ones, lots of freelance organizations here, again, some sector-specific ones as well. IPSI, International Association for Self-Employed People, all different organizations. You can join their Discord groups or tweet them, email them. They'll be more than happy to help. And one day, they will be asking you for advice, trust me. I've spoken at webinars, I've spoken in schools and on careers fairs. This was something for the Times, talking about chat bloody GPT, all sorts of different things. And after you've established yourself, people will think, actually, you know what you're talking about, so please come and impart wisdom. So it will come, it's just a case of building up your confidence and your experience. And this will help you stand out as well. Obviously, as a creative, it's really difficult to stand out in what is already a very saturated sector. So how else can we differentiate ourselves? Well, we can develop products. So this is our data visualization arm. Well, he is, my husband. On top of writing, brought him on with his skill set, and now he takes numbers and turns them into lovely graphics, and I write up the reports. We can also do things like applying for awards. Again, give you just a little bit more press coverage there. You might send a press release off to, say, York Press, or you might get a backlink to your website, so just improving your online presence there. And if you win, even better. Or you might even go the extra mile. I've gone this far without mentioning marathons, hey! So let's say, I'm not saying you have to run a marathon, obviously, but one of my clients was a charity and they did ask me to run the London Marathon for them, but I turned it into a whole fundraising campaign. I did this thing called Dares for Donations, where I said, if you donate, you can give me a dare to publicly humiliate myself, and I will do it on camera, and in exchange for donations. So it was things like go into co-op and just start bursting into song, or eat a massive chocolate cake a la Bruce Bogtrotter. I did that, I put it on LinkedIn, it went like viral, it got like 85,000 views, and we got the funds up in like 6 weeks when we had 6 months. And we got on TV, we got in the paper, and we got VIP seats at the Mall as well. So just going the extra mile for clients, again, that's a bit outrageous, but something that makes you memorable will really help you stand out. So I'm just going to give you, just to round off, a few case studies of how we've gone from these teeny little clients. I think our first client was a wedding photographer down in Surrey, to working with global brands, and just telling you how we did it. So how do we use LinkedIn? We use LinkedIn to win Reuters, which is the second largest news agency in the world. So we just responded to a LinkedIn request, just that inbound. We automated it, search, we're looking for freelance copywriters. We saw a post from Reuters, and we actually repurposed some blog content because they produce a report called the Digital News Report every year. And I write a blog about it, kind of like a bite-sized version, and I sent that to them just to say, look, I'm a genuine fangirl, I really love Reuters. And boom, they took us on. And that was just from responding to LinkedIn and repurposing content. Networking was great for us, and this is how we won HSBC. There is an event called Digital City Festival in Manchester. I went there and chatted to some people, and there was a guy who ran an organisation who pairs freelancers with brands. We went onto their website, we set up a profile, and they said, okay, your skill sets match what HSBC are looking for. Boom, they matched us together, and now we're working with other clients. We did some stuff for sort of for Formula One, tenuously linked to Formula One, and for Currys, stuff like that. Referrals, obviously, as I said, the freelancer's dream. This is how we won Amazon, specifically Amazon Web Services. It's a little bit higgledy-piggledy, this one. I spoke at an event down in Brighton, Measurefest, and then one of our attendees ran an agency. She watched the talk, and she knew another guy who ran an agency, and he knew my photographer who did our shots for the brand. So I met him, and then he recommended her, and then she worked with Amazon, and boom, we ended up writing for Amazon. So it's kind of like referrals and networking and events all in one. And finally, even Twitter, which I know is just a hellscape post Elon, but it can when you work. This is how we won PG Tips. So quite a fun client to work for. Again, that event in Manchester, I went there, I did a talk, and I spoke to other people. I added them on Twitter, said your talk was really good. They followed me back. They saw my blog content, and they just said, right, actually, we're looking for freelance copywriters. here's a brand we work with, PG Tips. So every now and then I now write their tweets. So that's what we've done, but let's put it back on you. Just some final takeaways as we round off. I don't know, it's 4 o'clock though. Getting started, okay, make sure you have got an online presence. Doesn't matter if it's an app in the beginning, it just needs to be there. Make sure you're joining those communities and collaborating with people, not competing with them, and make sure you shout about yourself because no one else is going to. Getting on board new clients, okay, make sure you've got a portfolio because you're always going to have to lean back on that. Focus on the inbound for now whilst you build up your confidence, and then people will start to refer to you via word of mouth just naturally. Watch out for the red flags because there will always be someone looking to take advantage. Once you're at that leveling up stage, look at all your clients and maybe tier them based on the value you're getting from them versus the time you're spending and how much money they're bringing in. And then look at the roles you each play within the organisation and look at how you can streamline your processes and make sure you're managing your time and expectations using tools like Trello or time tracking on Harpoon. And finally, thriving. So if you can diversify your product offering, like take people on to do like data, for example, or maybe go out to events, speak at events, just to make sure you stand out a little bit more there. But please do consider your mental health in every decision. We hear about burnout so often, so just ask yourself, what is really in it for me? And finally, focus on retention rather than acquisition because it's about those relationships. You know, people buy from people, but it is true, and that will help you avoid that feast and famine cycle. So, that is 7 years of freelancing kind of condensed into an hour. Thank you for listening, and I will happily take any questions.
One of the things that, when you were talking earlier in the talk, that I've sort of had to get better at is like the fear of losing all your clients and sort of not wanting to like ruffle the feathers a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice with that? Like if you're maybe not getting paid what you're worth, but you're like, well, it's better than not having any work at all.
So your fear is losing the client because you perhaps feel you're not earning enough and you want to say put your prices up with them.
Exactly.
Okay, I would just be honest with them. Particularly, a lot of people are kind of saying, I'm really sorry to say this, but with the cost of living crisis, costs are going up. So perhaps make it a separate issue rather than actually, no, you're not paying me enough. There are other exterior factors to consider. Or just sort of rejig kind of like the product offering to say, okay, this is what I used to offer, but this is what product I'm offering now, and kind of redress it as sort of, this is what you'll get, this is the added value you'll get, and this is the price you'll get for it. So for example, one of the agencies I worked for, I used to just charge them like 10p a word because I just had no idea. And then it was like, no, okay, let's make this more official, let's turn this into a retainer service. So let's do, I don't know, let's say £150 per blog post for 4 blog posts sort of thing. So I would just kind of repackage the service you're offering so that, yes, there will be a price change in there, but if you focus on what value you're giving them rather than what it costs, then just put the benefits to them rather than, the cost.
Could you expand on the sell the value, not the time thing?
Yeah, definitely. So I know I've whizzed through all the slides. An example people use, particularly for things like software as a service, is they say like, oh, I've written a landing page for, let's say it's Harpoon software, okay, here are the benefits, blah, blah, blah. And the clients turned around and said, oh, what? You're going to charge me £800 for 1 page of content? It's like, yes, but that page is going to be there forever. And every time someone signs up and buys that service, you're making money straight away. So it's that kind of like longevity. So it's not just a case of, yes, it's costing you £800. It's actually, how can it help you in the long term? That is a static piece of content. It doesn't need to be changed. I've done the work for you, and it's bringing it in. So, and it's not just a case of like a commodity. It's a case of, okay, what can people learn from this? How many other indirect opportunities can I get from this? Okay, I've got a sale, but also am I establishing myself as a thought leader? Am I becoming more authoritative just from having that piece of content on my website because someone else has articulated the words for me? I've got the knowledge up here, but I've got a copywriter to write it for me. So actually, yes, I'm showing people I can do it, sort of thing. So yeah, that's my rambling answer. Anyone else? No, okay, go and enjoy the sun, for God's sake. Right, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.